All right, welcome back. We are moving on today to talk about some new things about polygons. But before I do that, I want to just briefly make sure that everyone is good with what we were talking about on our last lesson. So we were talking about triangles and how we can use triangles to help us find angles in complex questions. If you look at the sample question I started with today, just as a quick review, you'll notice a couple of things that the little blue marks tell us that we've got an isosceles triangle. It just happens to be on its side. You're probably happier when they are upright like this. And then remember that we know that these two bottom angles are equal. We have that exact same situation over here, except for that the triangle is on its side, but we still have two equal angles down here. So you have to just be careful that you choose the right ones. The angles that are the same are always along the sides that are equal. So they're always down here. So how would we find all the angles in this question? Well, the key here is that we've got 88 degrees, and we know that all triangles are 180 degrees. So if we take 180 degrees and subtract the 88 degrees, that's going to leave us with 92 degrees. That means that the two angles down here are going to add to 92 degrees and that they are both equal. So if they're going to add to 92 and that they are both equal, we're going to have to take 92 and divide it by 2. And that'll tell us which each angle is. So 92 divided by 2, use your calculator if you need to. Half of 92 is 46. So each of these angles down here has to be 46 degrees. Now, hopefully you didn't get fooled and make a mistake and put 92 in here. Remember what we said last time, 92 does not work because this is a small angle. It's less than 90. You can tell by looking at it that it's smaller than 90 degrees because remember, a 90-degree angle is like that. So 92, if you put 92 in there, it doesn't work and it's not logical. So it doesn't make sense. Don't fall into that trap. It has to be smaller than 90. 46 works because it looks like it's about 46 degrees, which is almost half of a 90-degree angle. Once you've got 46 degrees there, you know already that this is a straight line. So to find this angle, what would be added to this one? It's supplementary, which means it adds to 180 degrees. So I take 180 and subtract 46, and that leaves me with 134 degrees, which would be this one here. And likewise, this one here is the same because its supplementary angle is 46. So that's using an isosceles triangle to help us find some angles. Here is a horrible sight. We've got some parallel lines and some transversals that intersect them. It also makes some triangles, and it's really a hot mess. But we can use our skills with triangles and parallel lines and angles and solve all of the missing angles, and there's quite a few. So notice first of all that they do have arrowheads on it, which means that they are running parallel, which means that you're going to have a bunch of identical angles. But let's start with the easy ones first. The opposite angles, which is exactly opposite of the corners, are 96 and 65. Those are my favorites because they're easy. What's next? Let's maybe move on to, we've got a straight line here. Straight lines are 180, so if I do 180 minus the 65 degrees, that should give me this angle right beside it, and that looks like it's going to be 115 degrees. And its opposite angle will be equal. Now, beside the 96, we're going to have, again, we've got a straight line. So that means that these two angles must add up to 180. So I'll take 180 and subtract 96. That's going to be 84 degrees. And across from it, the opposite angle is also 84 degrees. So there, we've got two of the intersections done. Now we can go a bunch of different ways. Let's look at the triangle here. This is a big hint. We've got a triangle. I'll draw it out. There it is. And we know 2 of the angles inside of the triangle. So all we need to do is subtract that from 180 degrees, and that should tell us what the other angles are. The other triangle angle is. So I'll take 180, which is the triangle, minus the 96, and then minus the 65. And you're left with 81 degrees. Again, use your calculator if you want. 81 seems like it is high. Is that possible? Let's try that again. 180 minus 96 minus 65. Yes, it is too much. It is 19 degrees. That makes more sense. So if this is 19 degrees, then the 3 of those would add to 180. Perfect. Now, once we know that that's 19, we know that across from it is exactly 19 because it's an opposite angle. We know that this is a straight line right here, so this has got to be 19 subtracted from 180, which is 161 and 161. All right, so far so good. Now we're down to the bottom part of this, and if you look closely, I'm going to draw it in red. This is a transversal that's going through 2 parallel lines. So this top intersection will be the same as this bottom intersection down here. Now, if we remove that, because there is no line that goes through there, this 65 up here, this has to be this 65 down here. It's called the corresponding angle. And this 115 here corresponds to this one up here. The exact same thing happens with this line, which I'm going to draw in green. These angles up here are going to be the same as these angles down here. So this has got to be 161, 161, and 19, and 19. All right, moving on. Today we're going to be actually talking about polygons. That's our topic. And most of you are familiar with polygons because we've already talked about them. A polygon is a multi-sided shape. We have ones that you know, triangle, the old square or quadrilateral, 4-sided. We've got a pentagon, which is 5-sided. And we've got a hexagon, which is 6-sided. How exciting is that? We also have a heptagon, which is 7-sided, an octagon is 8-sided, a nonagon is 9-sided, and a 10-sided shape is a decagon. So we have talked about those. The more of those that you can remember, the better. We're going to be today talking about the angles inside of a polygon. So you already know that the angles inside of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So if this was a 90, if this was a right triangle, and let's say that this was, I don't know, 45, and this was 45, that adds up to 180, that would be perfect. If this is a 90 here, let's say that this is a 60, and this would have to be a 30. That would add up to 190 as well. So all triangles add to 180. If you look at a rectangle or a square, or you'll also know, I'm sure, that each angle here is 90 degrees. It's a perfectly right angle. And 90 degrees. If you add all of the angles inside of a rectangle up, you get 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90. Or 90 times 4, which is 360 degrees. So all the angles inside of a quadrilateral, a 4-sided shape, adds up to 360 degrees. Now also, if you think about it this way, if you take a square or a rectangle and you can divide it into 2 triangles, and each triangle is 180. So that also is 180 and 180, which is 360. Amazingly enough. Now, a pentagon is a 5-sided shape, and each angle is not 90 degrees. As you can tell by looking at this, 90 degrees would be kind of like this, but we have slightly bigger angles. It's bigger than 90 degrees. And there are 5 of them. So, how would we find what the sum, that means when you add up all of the inside angles, what it would equal? Well, let's start at one corner and see how many triangles we can make, like we did with the quadrilateral, with the square. We could make a triangle to there, and we could divide it up into in fact, we could make 3 triangles out of this. 1, 2, and 3. And we know that each triangle is worth 180 degrees. So if we take 180 and times it by 3 triangles, we get 540 degrees. So the sum of the interior angles of a pentagon, a 5-sided shape, is 540 degrees. Now remember, a triangle was 180 degrees, and a square or rectangle was 360 degrees. And now we're at a pentagon is 540. Now here we've got an 8-sided shape, an octagon. And how many triangles could we make out of that? Notice that each angle is getting bigger as there's more sides. Now, if we start at one spot and join it up to the other corners, we can find out how many triangles we can make from an 8-sided shape. We're always going to start at the same point and go to all of the other corners. Obviously, we can't go to this corner because it's already drawn in there. So all the other corners that it's not attached to, and it looks like we can make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 triangles out of an 8-sided shape. 6 triangles, and we all know that each triangle is worth 180 degrees. So we take 180 degrees and times it by 6 triangles. 6 times 180, use your calculator if you need to, it's 1,080 degrees. So all of the angles added together would be 1080. That's inside of an 8-sided shape. All right, so let's do a quick review. This is a 5-sided shape. This is a 7-sided shape, 8-sided shape, and this one I think is a 10-sided shape. Maybe I'll put them above instead. All right, so 5-sided shape, we said we could make 3 triangles. 7-sided shape, we could make 1. Is that 7 sides? I think it is, yeah. One, 2, 3, 4, 5 triangles. 8-sided shape, we can make 1, 3, 4, 5. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 triangles. And a 10-sided shape, if we start in one spot and go to all the other ones, we can make 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 triangles with. Notice that there's a bit of a pattern forming. 5 sides, you can make 3 triangles. 7 sides, you could make 5 triangles. 8 sides, you could make 6 triangles. And 10 sides, you could make 8 triangles. And remember that each triangle is 180 degrees. So this 5-sided shape is 3 times 180, like we already said, which is 540. The second one is 5 triangles, each times 180. And that's 900. So that would be 900 degrees, which would be the total of all of the inside angles. An 8-sided shape would be 6 triangles, so that would be 6 times 180, which we already said is 1080. And a 10-sided shape is 8 times 180. So what's 8 times 180? 1440. Again, that's how many degrees would be inside of all of the angles inside one of these shapes. Now notice that there is a formula. Every time we've got a certain amount of sides, we have 2 less numbers of triangles. 7 sides, we could make 5 triangles with. 8 sides, we could make 6 triangles with. And 10 sides, we could make 8 triangles with. So that is a key for trying to figure these things out. Here is the magic formula, is however many sides you have, right? Take how many sides there are, subtract 2, and times that by 180, and that'll tell you the total for the entire shape if you added them all together. So for example, if you had a 20-sided shape, you would subtract 2, so number of sides, subtract 2, so 20 minus 2, which is 18, and times that by 180, because that means that there's 18 triangles, and each of those are 180 degrees. That's a total of 3,240 degrees would be if you added up every one of these angles inside the shape. The grand total, or the sum, would be 3240. So if you had a 50-sided shape, just simply subtract 2, which would be 48 triangles, and times that by 180. That's the shortcut. And then you would find out what the total inside that polygon is. Now, one last thing we want to discuss briefly before we go is that if it's a regular pentagon or polygon, each angle is exactly the same. So if you had a pentagon, that's 5 sides. That means you've got 3 triangles. That means 3 times 180, which we already said is 540. That would be the total of all 5 exactly the same size. So I would then divide it by 5 because there's 5 identical corners in here. All of these are the same size. So if I divide it by 5, that'll give me what each angle is. So in this case, each angle is 108 degrees, which was the total 540 divided by 5 equal sized triangles, or angles I should say. So that's 108 degrees on each of these. And that should add to 540 if I added them all up. So once again, if you had a 6-sided regular, remember it has to be regular for them to be all equal, you would take 6 sides, subtract 2, which is 4, times that by 180, which is 720. That would be the total of all of them, and then divided by how many corners there are. And on a 6-sided shape, there are 6 corners. And they're all identical, so I would simply divide 720 by 6. And each angle is 120 degrees. So all of these are 120 each. All right, let's stop there and leave it at that for today. Try today's worksheet. Good luck.